Wonderful good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. It's yet another episode with Max Cloud Adventure in Cloud Platform. I hope you can hear and see me clearly. We had a couple of technical issues with my guest today, Marius Obert. He's still waiting in the green room. Please give me a shout whenever you have issues with the stream, or actually I have issues with the stream. Yeah, before we're going to start into the actual topic today with Marius, I have a couple of things to share in the beginning. As usual, I want to share some. Let me just go over to my actual scene. We again have some issues. Sorry for that. Alrighty, you should now see my desktop. In the last couple of days, there were some OpenSAP courses which just started. The first one, which is really close to my heart, is the SAP Cloud Application Programming Model. Started on Monday. It's the first week, so you're still able to join. There's lots of information about the general concept of Cloud Application Programming Model, and in detail with Node.js. But I published just spontaneously, I published a new tutorial beginning of the week for Cap Java. Let's just have a look if we can find it. If you're interested into how to start with Cloud Application Programming for Java, get started tutorials. We just switch it over. I have the stream as well here. Where are we? Here we are. Get started tutorials. And there should be a tag for the Cloud Application Programming Model. And here we have a new mission on how to get started with Cap Java. I also put this into the stream and the OpenSAP course. What else do I have? There is also a new OpenSAP course, which just started yesterday with lots of information about tomorrow's ERP with S4HANA. Goes around, is it 4 or 5 weeks? 5 weeks, exactly, with Tomosawa Asigan and some other prominent guests. Highly recommend this for everybody who's not that familiar with S4HANA. What else do I have? I have a blog post, which I found really interesting because I've been in contact with Harold for quite some time. Has already 3,000 views within a week. It's about how to combine the SAP Cloud Platform workflow service with functionality for Microsoft Outlook, which is, in case, let me just show that, so-called adaptive cards. So once a workflow is coming in and you need to approve or decline, reject it, you don't have to go to if your Launchpad or your inbox anymore. You can directly approve it, for example, here, approve it from your inbox, which is super interesting. Harold provided lots of information, plus sample coding, plus all sort of, where do we have it? References how to get started. Did I put it into the chat already? I think so. And last but not least, because I'm waiting for Marius already, is my colleague Vitaly Rudnitsky. I hope I pronounced it the right way. Sharing all sort of information in the last couple of days and weeks about how to connect to either HANA Cloud or to SAP HANA through the Windows PowerShell. Good morning, Gregor. Thanks for joining. Or some command line tools on macOS, etc. So that's also something I would highly recommend. Good morning, Saravanan. Hope you're doing fine. Perfect. So that's for the warm-up today. So as I already announced, I have a guest with me today, Marius Obert, also a colleague of mine in the same team. And I don't want to spoil it too much. I just take a look on how to get into the stream. Perfect. We had some technical issues, so I just need to adjust his camera. And I think if I send it to live, we should have Marius on the stream. Hey, good morning, Marius.
Hi, Max. How are you doing?
Not too bad. I mean, it's a slightly relaxed session for me today because I have you with me. How's it going for you? I mean, it's pretty early still,
It
right?
is pretty early, yes. I mean, luckily I'm working from home, so I didn't have to commute for long, so I didn't get up too early. Probably in a normal week I wouldn't vote for a 9 a.m. meeting, but yeah, I'm here and I'm awake.
So, what's your usual office or office hours?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's okay to be in the office at 9, but not being productive at the very first minute when you show up, because then, I mean, I really like to go in the physical SAP office just because we have these nice coffee machines there, and you can hear some music on the way when you take public transportation. But these are all things that aren't possible nowadays. So this is why my home office is, you cannot really see it. I'm in my kitchen here because then at least I can switch rooms after I wake up.
So, well, we have been in some calls already. So, what's your biggest pain at home?
The biggest pain, I mean, it's really like having this routine. I would say it's really hard to get into your routine every day because it kind of all blends together. And also I'm in the kitchen, and obviously I don't have a proper desk in my kitchen, so I'm just have like this kitchen table that I'm sitting on with on bar stools, and that's basically how I work. So I really try to go for a run every day or every other day, to be more precise, just to have some kind of a routine.
Okay, I've just seen. I'm not sure if you've posted it, but like the setup with your screen on the
Oh,
kitchen desk is like the screen is way too big for your desk,
yeah,
which
it's
is
like,
kind of funny.
I mean, I can wait. Let me show. Oh, it doesn't really work. Yeah, I mean, I have a kitchen table that is maybe that wide, and my monitor is that wide. So my monitor actually goes beyond the table. I mean, the kitchen table is larger, but I use it vertically because otherwise the distance between the monitor and my face would be like this. Yeah, I
But
guess
at
everyone has to
least
bite the
you're
bullet
able to
here.
work from home.
Yes. And I mean, I'm still glad I brought this monitor. I mean, this is actually the monitor I have in the office. I'm super lucky that I have it, because having a second monitor is so important in general, especially like if you code or just want to be very productive.
Well, that depends, I would say, but I don't want to go into that direction. I
Yeah.
mean, luckily DJ is not on the stream because he was like, well, you could use a Windows Manager on a single screen setup. But anyway, let's talk about what you've been doing the last couple of weeks. What have you done? Give us an idea.
um, yes. So, I mean, we already talked about the situation that we're in, and obviously we are still very lucky that the impact on our life is still comparably small. I mean, there are many people that have a way larger impact in their life.
Yeah.
And one example is that, for example, in the US, many students require or are used to go to school every day because besides education, the school offers them lunch or warm meal or maybe multiple meals.
Mhm.
And sadly, this is not possible during the lockdown. So many students have the problem that they still, I mean, they would still love to have food provided to them, just because maybe the other circumstances don't allow it for them to have it. Which is why SAP partnered with, I think 51K is the official. It's like an organization. I guess it's an NGO called
Mhm.
Gen Youth, and their mission in general is to provide a more healthier life for students or for young people. And they usually work together with schools and districts to see how they can improve the lunch schedule. And during these times, obviously they have the network and they know the schools and the districts and
Mhm.
how this works. So they try to work together with SAP to basically provide an application that would allow students or in some cases, even like the families of the students, to find out where can they get free food during the lockdown. And I mean, our main focus was currently food, but we also have it in the back of our mind to extend this to like medical aid or to other services that could be provided by literally anyone. So we start with the schools. It's still like our main focus area, main use case. But we are also already thinking about crowdsourcing it so that anyone could enter like a place and a resource they provide, and that will be visualized on a map. And this is the application we built in the last like couple of weeks. And it was a lot of work, I can tell you, because it was, I mean, when I heard, I mean, I'm sure you heard about this Rückholprogramm.de, that SAP built for the German government or the Foreign Affairs Office. And they did a like really great job, and they released this application in like, I think, less than a day.
Yeah.
And this is like a real sprint. And I mean, I don't think we had as many resources, and it took us longer. And we did it besides our regular office hours and our regular duties that we have at work. So it took us more time, but I'm very happy with the result that we got. And I mean, this is basically what I'm here today to show you what we built and also how we built it, because I mean, I still want to keep it on a technical level as this is technical live stream.
So I think that's a good bridge to just, I'll enable your screen now if we send it live. And we need to put you in the screen as well with your camera. And give me a second to adjust it. Let me double check that. Yeah, should already work. So I think we've already spent 15 minutes on not showing anything, but I think we are both keen on showing code, etc. So do you want to show us the app in the beginning, or how do you want to start?
That's a good idea. So here you can see so we did last night, really European time last night, we did a new deployment to production here. So this is not like, we have not officially announced the application because we want to leave that out to our partner. It's not a secret. I mean, the website is out there. A lot of data entries are already there. The rollout did not start yet, but the application is there. So what you're going to see now is the live application. So let me just refresh the entire page so you see how it starts, because I think we have this really nice splash screen here.
So that's, for example, the page a student or a pupil or whoever could access in order to find out what's going on.
Yes, exactly. So by default, we also, I mean, let me turn off the user prompt, because it makes sense to localize the user for to show them records close to them. But as I'm in Germany and I didn't turn on the fake location in the Chrome DevTools, it wouldn't make sense to like locate my user in Munich. So when someone turns off the location feature of the browser or doesn't want to provide the location, they basically see a map of the US, and then they can enter any place. So do you have a suggestion? Where do you want to like have a closer look? It could be a city, could be like a name of a building. This is like a powered with the Google Maps API, so we can really enter anything. So
the worst case would be no, I don't gotta destroy your demo. So what about San Francisco?
Yeah, sure. So we could just say SF, as it's the famous abbreviation, San Francisco. And then the map zooms in, and we see there are quite some offerings here in San Francisco. And when we hover one, for example, this school, we say, okay, there's dinner, lunch, and breakfast on all weekdays, and the distribution happens from 11 a.m. to noon. And basically, when you click on it, you see like this planner control where you could also see when does it happen. So what we noticed at most schools, they say they offer different types of food, but they distribute it once per day, so only during 1 hour. But it's not that they only can get breakfast, even though these are like between breakfast and lunchtime. But basically, it's pickup only for most schools. We also had a discussion with them, like it was really like going back and forth, like what do schools and districts want to provide and when. And this is like the most famous model. I've also seen that Some say they provide food for every day of the week, but you can only pick it up on 2 days. So I think they have a Monday pickup and a Friday pickup, but then they give you lunch boxes for several days back home.
Okay.
Yeah, when you click somewhere else on the map, this planner minimizes again. What I think is
Mhm.
also a really cool feature is that, okay, now let me turn on the DevTools for 2 reasons. One is to turn on the mobile view and refresh it because this application is responsive. So when I simulate a Pixel phone here, so
Mhm.
a smartphone basically,
Nice.
and then you see it's way smaller. The control looks different. The header is also less populated. And when they click on it, they don't see this large planner that they see on desktop devices, but only like a pop-up like this one.
Okay. I mean, we basically will discuss the
Yeah.
technical artifacts in just a few seconds, but that's all thanks to UI5, right?
Yes, this is 100% UI5, and I mean obviously the Google Maps SDK, which there has been a great open source project already, where basically someone, I think Jasper was the GitHub name, wrapped the Google Maps SDK in a UI5 controller, and we reused this one,
Nice.
and it really made our life so much easier. So open source, woo!
Nice. Okay. Um, so I think we've already started to talk about, but could you give us a rough idea of what artifacts are involved on a stack level? Like
Sure.
UI5 is already on a UI level, obviously,
Yeah.
but underneath.
So it is a CAP application, but it's I have to say it's the most complex CAP application I've ever built because we use a calc view for this geolocation search. So if I zoom out, you see that we basically only show records within a 200-mile radius of the location entered. So if I zoom out
Mhm.
and out and out and out, you would see that, I mean, the clusters obviously becomes very compact, but then it stops because we said, okay, we know people, they probably start moving their map to north, to the south, to whatever direction. But at the end, they're only interested about what's kind of in their area. And we said, okay, we just assume no one would go further than 200 miles. And that's why we said, okay, this is how we do this define the query. And obviously for this, we need HANA spatial services and a
Mhm.
calc view. And obviously combining a calc view and I've never done that before, to expose the results of a calc view as a OData service. That was also one of the many very interesting things that I learned during this project.
Okay.
And yeah, what else? I mean, SAP Cloud Platform, UI5, CAP, HANA features like that calc view, HTML5 application repository. I also have
Mhm.
this on the internal GitHub. Where is it? I have an architecture diagram somewhere. Is it on the?
I've seen it already somewhere. You showed it to me yesterday.
So let's just have a look at it here. Can I full screen? No, that was the wrong.
If you do a right click on it and open it in a new tab, would that
Yeah,
work?
that's maybe a good idea. Yes, here's the architecture diagram. Basically, it's very simple. Also, we have used many tools like the version 2 of the UI5 tooling, obviously the CDS language server protocol for VS Code, MBT to package everything, various other NPM packages that are available on NPM that are not directly related to SAP Cloud Platform development, the Cloud Foundry
Mhm.
CLI, and Human to bootstrap some of the modules of this project.
So, well, just to sum it up, you haven't been using any web IDE or anything else. It's all locally on your machine, right?
Yes, so we have had this set up because I think this was very new for everyone. We just said, okay, we keep it to the basics. Everyone had VS Code already installed because there were people from all parts of SAP development involved. So we thought, okay, just like this is maybe a good
Okay.
way to get everyone on board. And I mean, it worked out quite well, I have to say.
All right. So, So you've been approached by some interns about the idea of this application in general, but how did you start, and how would you probably start it differently when you look at it now?
So I mean, in the beginning, obviously, I've been asked, hey, can you, or maybe I should say, who did what? So there are like 3 web applications. I was mainly responsible for the map application that we just saw. I was supported by a designer. So basically, I was more doing the development. He was doing the design of this application that we saw. Scott Dillon was mainly in charge of the CAP backend part. Then we had some colleagues like Ape and Krishna who did the calc view. And Michael Graf, he did another web application that we are going to see later, which is basically used by the school districts to add data to this to the database.
We already have the first question in the chat by, obviously, Gregor. Gregor, thanks for your question. Good morning, DJ, by the way. Good morning, Philip. Good morning, Gregor. He's asking, well, first of all, he says local development for the win, obviously. But how did you work with like HANA locally? How did it go?
That's a very good question. I would postpone it to maybe in 5 minutes, and then I'll get back to it.
Cool.
One thing that you can see here in this chart that we haven't talked about so far is that there are these 2 components where we say it's an IAS tenant that we have, where people can sign up, because obviously the school districts, they don't have a SAP ID, and doesn't make sense to ask them to sign up for one just to use the application. So we have this one, and we use SAP Web Analytics to track how many visitors do we have in this application, how many per day, which do they use mobile devices, do they use desktop? Because I think eventually this is not a product that we sell, right? So we were wondering, does it make sense to invest a lot in the desktop version of the app, because we figured out that many people would prefer the mobile application just because it's easier, or the mobile website. And obviously we didn't do the rollout, so we don't have this answer yet, but we are hoping that we can get all these questions answered from using SAP Web Analytics. So these 2 components are optional, because you can use the standard SAP IDP and you don't have to use Web Analytics. And then you could say basically this entire project here runs in a trial, which is really great, because I mean, all you need is just application runtime, HTML5 app repo, access URA, and an HDI container. So what we do is like, we test it on our local environment, but some things, for example, if you want to test the calc view, we just deploy to the trial to test it there, and then we have, if the developer is happy, then we deploy to this like development branch on the main repository, from which we are going to deploy to production, development, and eventually to production.
Okay. Well, so you said, just combining 2 things. You said you have it in a GitHub repository and you're able to deploy the app to the HANA trial. Does that mean that at some point in time, our like audience or people out there are able to try it and have a look at it?
Yes, absolutely. So this is also what many of us like had. I mean, we didn't speak to each other, but Michael and I, we both had the same idea. We want to make this open source, and we already went through the process. We're mostly through it, so I cannot tell you when we'll be ready to publish it, because obviously we have to clean up the README, we have to add more instructions, because everyone in the team kind of knows how to deploy it, how to test it. But these are all things we have to write in the README. But it will be on GitHub eventually. I mean, eventually, I don't mean in 5 months. It will be like in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome. It's up to you. Do you want to show some of the coding things, or how do you want to do it?
That sounds good. So what you see here is like the internal GitHub. Let's switch to development branch. And basically added a few, the formatting is not really nice. A few code highlights. Let's see if, let's open them up in VS. I can also open the project here. And these are things I think that are interesting that we did during development. So I just want to ask you, what are you interested in seeing? And I will show you the code and talk a little bit about that code. And one of these things is, how did we do the calc view with SQLite, which is basically Gregor's question, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds like something I haven't done ever. And I think the majority out there haven't done it yet. But yes. I think there's at least a section in the CAP documentation talking about how to leverage HANA native objects in CAP, right?
To be honest, there might be one. I didn't do that part. So I'm not. I think it was a little bit trickier because it wasn't like in the documentation one-to-one. I mean, there is the section about native artifacts, but I think for CalcView it was something special. I can just repeat what I've been told. So it was that you cannot directly expose the CalcView in CAP, but you can wrap the CalcView in a HANA function, and you can expose the result of that HANA function in CAP. And this is basically what we had to do to expose it. But I mean, this is one side of the coin. The other side is what do we do locally? Because obviously SQLite is not. I mean, there's no concept of a CalcView in SQLite.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what we've done is that can you already see VS Code? Yes.
Yep,
so let me increase the font size a little bit.
Yeah, that would be nice. That's something I always forget.
So you see the server module here, where we define various CAP services. Let's close everything here. And you see the basic service that we have for the entry form. And you see the service that we provide for the approver app. Because I mean, there's a third application that I didn't talk about yet. We have an application to get the data in, but this one just requires a sign up. So we have an approver app where an admin of us or Genuve, they can just like approve records that they say, oh, this makes sense. It's not a duplicate. And only if a record has been approved, it will be visible on the map. So there are 3 applications, and therefore we have 3 services in CAP. And I said that we have 3 services, but you see 4 CDS files here. We have one that we call map service for HANA, which is where we define entities, school offerings, and select from CalcView, and define the parameters that come in as parameters or that are exposed as parameters in the OData service. And we have this other service, a map SQLite, where I just return everything. I don't do this filter on the location. I just say, okay, return everything. But I make joins and change the column names. So it sounds like, or it is the same data structure. It is the same column names. It's the same properties as the result of the CalcView would have. So, and then when I saw here in the package.json, or to be more precise, in the CDS configuration, I basically define db kind SQLite, and here I only like the map SQLite CDS. And when we say kind HANA, I define the other CAP service. And by doing this, on the local scenario, I only expose the fake CalcView that only mocks the data structure, and in production, I actually use the CalcView as an OData service, or expose the CalcView as an OData service. And the same definition happens here in the build as well.
Okay, so what I didn't understand probably was too fast for me, or like my screen is a little slower here. How do you reference in your service the HANA function? Or is it a table function? I'm not a HANA pro, to be honest.
So you mean how do I expose the CalcView as a CAP service?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, this is also something I didn't know before this project. So there are 2 steps. One, there is in the DB module, we define an artifact that is the CalcView with CD persistence exists. So I mean, okay, there are 3 steps. One, I basically just add a CalcView. I mean, the CalcView is basically a large XML. And we add this CalcView in the source folder, so it will be imported during the HDI deploy of the DB module. So here is the CalcView. Here are 2 other CalcViews that we only had for testing purposes. So this is the CalcView we use, CV, SAP for Kids. And as you see, it's just a large XML file. I don't know more than it's a large XML file and it works. This is step 1. Then the CalcView is in HANA. Step 2 is to make the CAP aware of this HANA artifacts. HANA artifact. This is what we do here with this CDS persistence exists, and here we reference the name CV, SAP for Kids, and these are the parameters of the calc view. So we insert a let, long, and a proximity filter, which is basically just an integer that defines the number of miles search radius that we want to have.
Okay, just to sum it up, like I haven't done this persistence exists a lot of times, and I think Fox didn't do it as well. But persistence exists just basically tells CAP what format a artifact which already exists has, and makes that possible to consume it in CAP, right?
Exactly. So, right, what you see below is basically the data structure it exposes. So CAP knows how the metadata file should be structured when someone accesses that part of the OData service. So step 1, inserting the calc view XML. Step 2, CDS persistence exists. Step 3 is exposing it in, wait, it's below here. Just exposing it with this entity school offers. Obviously, we have to use the same parameters for the CAP service. So basically here we define the parameters for the CAP service. And here in the select, we map the parameters of the CAP service to the parameters of the calc view.
Nice. Awesome. Okay. Well, I mean, it's like obvious if we're talking about this, that there are usually two worlds. One is an HANA expert, the other one is a CAP expert. How did you do that? Like, who modeled the calculation view, and how did it like transition to you?
Yeah, this is one of the topics where I have to say we had HANA experts, but they were not doing cloud development so far, so they were doing on-premise HANA development. And so we had to figure that out a little bit ourselves. And the way we did it is probably not. I mean, this is also this is not like it's a nice to learn project. And I think it's worth open sourcing it because there's a lot of knowledge in there. But I don't think everything we did was best practice. So, for example, I mean, the calc view modeling happened in Web IDE. So we connected to the HDI container. The colleagues modeled it in the Web IDE, and they just exported it and provided the CSV, this XML file to us.
Okay.
So this is how we did it. I guess there's a smarter way to do it. We just don't know it.
Yeah, but that's life.
Yeah.
There's a question in the chat from Vincent. Good morning, Vincent. He's asking, why don't you deploy the HANADB to your trial and bind to that with the default environment JSON? You can still code locally with that. We're doing that as we can't filter entities and properties in expanded entities in SQLite. I think that refers to why do you have like two CDS files? One is mapping the HANA artifacts and the other one is the SQLite.
Yes. So good question. I mean, to be honest, we didn't like evaluate it for a long time. We started with that we said, okay, there's one application, the entry application. We want to have that on SQLite, and that was very easy because it's just inserting data. It's a form, and then we just expanded from there and said, okay, how much can we do locally with SQLite? I was thinking of doing that for a couple of seconds, but then I'm not sure if you still need it, but in the past you had to open an SSH tunnel, so it wasn't as easy as just doing the CDS deploy to HANA. And at one point I just said, okay, let's see if this mocking it works. And it did work for our use case, but I agree that I'm sure depending on which features of HANA you use at some point, mocking them in SQLite is probably way harder than just like mocking the data model.
Okay, awesome. Vincent, does that help? If not, just hit us up. Marius can't escape. All right, I think you mentioned a couple of minutes ago that you get a couple of highlights and want to give the audience the possibility to choose what we're going to talk about. Is that right?
Yes. So these are we already talked about like how to expose a calc view in CAP and how to simulate calc view in SQLite. And here are like 3 other ones. I mean,
okay, which authorization checks are performed and where? I think that refers to how do you define it in CAP and CDS files, right?
Yes.
How to serve many web apps from one HTML5 app repo. App router, that's super interesting because there was some blog posts in the recent weeks about how the app router works in general. how to implement a splash screen with UI5. Super interesting because I have no idea about UI5, admittedly. What is the npm script workaround doing? How to use the new UI5 control rendering API. So I think it's up to you guys what we want to hear about. Just give us a shout in the chat. We don't gonna wait for 2 minutes, so be fast. And whenever you have questions, just let us know. So, well,
it
DJ
could also
already.
be other questions that are not part of this
Yeah.
list. It's just a suggestion list.
Like, why haven't you used Java, for example?
It's too early to answer that. No, I mean, honestly, most of the topics also, we were asked like by the designer if we would be interested to use the web components for the Vue framework or fundamental styles. And honestly, it was just because, I mean, the team was more or less assembled randomly because Scott Dillon reached out to Tom Young. He said, oh, can Marius help with the UI app? They also reached out to Michael Graf. And I mean, they basically, I think it was mostly Scott and Sarah who reached out to their personal network, asked for, hey, can you do UI development? And then the question was, okay, what framework do you feel most comfortable in? How can we get this up and running fastest? So this is why we have selected UI5. Also because there was this great library we could use to wrap the Google Maps control. And the same was for Cap Java, Cap Node.js, and not against Cap Java, just because the people involved were preferring that option.
Okay.
There was no time to do deep technical evaluation on the steps that we did.
Okay. Yeah, I think DJ and Aladdin, good morning, Aladdin, by the way, both asked for how to serve many web apps from HTML5. And that's
Nice.
Something I really look forward to as well, because I've been playing around with the HTML5 repo. And for me, it's like a little mind-blowing what's going on, such a black box. And I think it would be helpful for people out there to have a look at that as well.
So let's have a look at the overall folder structure here on the left. So you basically see we have 3 web apps. They're all prefixed with UI underscore. And each of them...
Marius, do you want to just lower your font size slightly?
Okay.
Not bumping up again, because then it would be a little bit more the other way around.
Yeah, I only know this one shortcut. Let me wait.
It's Control minus usually.
Yeah, but I have I always mix between the American keyboard layout and the German.
Okay.
So, and on the Mac, you don't really see like which key is the second. Sometimes you see the second function, but you never know which one is plus, which one is minus. So is that okay or one?
Yeah, that seems to be good. To have like a little overview of what your folder structure is. Nice.
Okay, cool. So you see here the 3 web apps. Each module folder has one web app folder and the UI5 YAML descriptor, where we basically define how the UI5 tooling should be run. Okay, this is still version 1. Here in this one in the map, I already migrated to the UI5 tooling version 2, or to the descriptor version 2. And here we basically define, so all the UI5 resources are also pulled not from the CDN, but from the NPM, because you might have noticed that SAP UI5, not only OpenUI5, but also SAP UI5 resources are available on NPM. So you can basically use them also to make a self-contained build. What we didn't do here, because self-contained build improves the performance of the application, but also makes it way larger, because when we do this, I think the one UI application had around 80 megabyte. And then we say, okay, this is like not worth saving a little bit more time during the startup. So we basically get the UI5 resources from the CDN, but all of our code is bundled in this. Bundled in one component bundle file.
Nice. Okay.
And this is all the definition. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to interrupt you in a nutshell. I mean, I'm not a UI5 pro or whatever. But UI5 tooling sounds kind of new, isn't it?
The version 2 is very new. I think that one was released 2 weeks ago. The UI5 tooling itself has been around since I think 2.5 years, so it's compared to the lifetime of UI5, it is also quite new, and I think it doesn't have the visibility it should have, because it's really cool, because with all the features that I've configured here, you can have live reloading, so you just do one command, you start it once, and when you do changes in the code, the website, like in all browsers, it just refreshes automatically, so you see your changes live as soon as you save the file. This makes it easy. Here we use the UI5 middleware from Volker. That makes it really easy to test, to mock destinations in a local environment, and then you can just deploy them out.
Nice. Okay.
So I just do this deploy once, and when I run it locally, this SAP for Kids service points to port 4004, where my CAP service runs. And if I deploy to the cloud, let's go up to the app router. Basically,
in the meantime, I just put the links to the UI5 tooling and Volker's middleware into the chat.
Great. So basically here you see this is this destination we also use in production. And the destination is provided, as always with CAP applications, in the mta.yaml here, where it's injected basically in the app router application as an environment variable. But the actual question was, how do we bundle all of these three web applications together? So I think this is a two-step approach probably. So we have this one NPM script. There are many, but the one I want to focus on is build UI, and that basically builds the map, the form, and the approver application in parallel. And I mean, just this basically here you see
what is run minus p?
That's what's the name of this? It's also a standard NPM package, NPM run all, and it means run in parallel. So you can say run in parallel or run in sequence. Here, I mean, here it doesn't make sense run in sequence because there's just one, because it makes the script working on Windows as well. On Mac, you can just say ampersand, and then it will basically execute one command, and when it's done, the other one. But this won't work on Windows, which is why I use this npm run. npm run all was the name of the package.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then I can say, for example, when I build the UI, basically run all of three builds of the UI apps in parallel, which also saves some time. And each of them just executes a UI5 build command with some additional parameters that we use. For example, yeah, I mean, these are just parameters. I mean, I think we will go a little bit too deep. It's the UI5 build that does all the magic. And what I can say here is that it basically, the destination folder where it creates all the bundle, or where it moves all the bundled resources to, is deployer, resources, and then map, approver, or form. So this is like the module that we have here, UI deployer, or deployer. It has a resources folder, and here we see all of our web applications with the component debug, the component preload, and the component JS, which is just minified. Debug is the normal one if you turn on the UI5 debugging features, and preload is basically where everything is in one file, and this is what's being loaded per default, so the user gets the application up and running as fast as possible with only one request sent.
Okay, two questions, dumb questions, but there are no dumb questions. First of all, so it seems like that in your team, somebody were using Windows, you're using a Mac OS. Yeah. Were there like any issues? I think you've used a central GitHub repository and just somehow shared your content. Is there like any extra steps to get it running on either Windows or Mac OS, or did you like configure everything that it works out of the box?
I mean, it should work out of the box. There are, like, Michael is using Windows for sure. Scott is using Mac.
Don't blame them.
Yeah, and Shibachi is using Windows, and Dan is, I think, using Mac. So I think we have 3 Macs, 2 Windows, and I haven't heard anyone complaining and screaming. So I hope this setup works for everyone. So it would be in the NPM. I mean, it is in the README. All you have to do to run it locally is obviously all the requirements, install make. I mean, these are like, if you develop on Cloud Platform, you have this, and then you just clone the repo, cd init, npm install, and npm run deploy.
Nice. Okay.
Or if you want to do it locally, you have to do a CDS deploy and an npm start.
Okay. Well, that's for the first question. The second question would be, well, as I said, I'm not a UI5 expert, but what happens if you build the UI? Is it linting? Is it running grunt, etc., and then copying to like the destination folder, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you configure it. So,
yeah.
I mean, there's this UI5 YAML descriptor that I showed earlier, where you can basically define the build steps that you want to do. Also in a package.json. So I basically take the default, everything, we can go through the command. I say UI5 build, and normally you can just execute it where your UI5 YAML descriptor is. It will pick up the information from the descriptor and just make the build according to how you specified it, or to the default if there's no special configuration. In this case, I execute npm build from the project root, which is why I configure the path to the UI5 YAML of the map application, for example. Clean dest basically just says remove everything in the destination and then just create new all the new resources from a clean slate, just to avoid files that are being left out there, stuff like that. We already talked about that, where I define the path, and here I say include one task, generate manifest bundle. I don't remember because it was a long time ago, but I think this is needed if you wanna. I think that you only need that if you have if you want to deploy a FLP application, because the portal service needs it. So technically, we probably don't need it here. It was just got in here because of copy and paste. I don't think we would need it, but this is like a good example how you could customize the build process to include additional tasks that are not in there by default.
Okay, nice.
And yeah, to round up the previous question, so you see the deployer application that has all the apps in the resources folder, and this is an npm application that basically just starts this HTML5 app deployer. And when you do the deployment to Cloud Foundry, it's a Cloud Foundry task like the DB schema setup. It will start once, it will start up, take all folders that are in resources are expected to be a separate web app, push them to the HTML5 application repository, then the application will stop, won't consume memory, won't consume CPU, but your apps will be in the repo.
Okay, so the HTML5 repo is, I would call it, fairly new, at least to me. Yeah. What's the biggest benefit of the HTML5 app repo? I think it's just tackling the pain of if you have an app router with multiple UIs below and you change one app, that you don't have to deploy everything again.
Yes. So the biggest advantage I would really say is that you decouple the web application lifecycle from the app router lifecycle. Because every time you do a new deployment to the app router will be down. It means no one can use your application. So it makes sense to have a separate place where to store the UI5, or could be any web application, any static resource. So you basically put your web app into a place, and you tell the app router to reference or redirect the traffic to that place. So you basically decouple these two components, which I think makes a lot of sense, for also just to have it in the back of your mind to know that the app router is not equal to your web application, because the app router is a backend component and the web application is a client component.
Does it make sense to show the app router for a second how to reference the apps?
Sure. I mean, we can show it, but we don't reference it. This is the magic that happens behind the scenes.
Yeah, exactly.
So here in the route, we only define the destination to the CAP service, the name of the destination of the CAP service, so it can redirect the traffic to it. And by default, we basically all incoming traffic will be redirected to this com SAP for Kids resource locator. On second thought, I would have really shortened that name because it makes the URL ugly and it's very long, but we start to give out the URL, so we don't want to change it anymore.
Okay.
So in case you wonder, what does it mean or what is this? Let me open the map application. So this is basically a redirect to the map application. And when I look at the component.js, you basically not the component.js, but the manifest YAML JSON. You see this is the ID of the app without the dots separating it. So this is the COM SAP for Kids resource locator that we see here. So the app router will basically, it connects automatically when you deploy it to the HTML5 application repository if the service is bound, and asks the repository, hey, what apps do you have stored? And then the repository says, okay, these are the apps, these are the IDs of the apps that I have stored. And if there's a incoming request at the root to the, for example, COM SAP for Kids resource locator, the app router knows, aha, I remember this is an application that is stored in the HTML5 application repository, so I redirect all traffic to that entry in the repository.
Okay, nice. I'm just looking at the time. We have 5 minutes left. I'm just looking at this chat if we have any other questions right now. Not. So there's an automatic translation between the names, i.e. removing or adding the dots. DJ is asking regarding the thing you just showed between the route in the XSAP JSON and the manifest.
Yeah, so I think probably process would be handled, but it would be kind of strange to have a dot in the URL. I think that's just why they remove it. I don't do anything special. It's just that this is a default behavior. I'm not sure if you could override it if you really want it to be. And I mean, also on second thought, I was like, I understand that if you have a large repository where you want to put a lot of UI apps into it, that the namespace is in there. But again, on second thought, I would remove that part. And I would remove that part of the ID just to have / resource locator in the URL. I think that would be easier to read and understand.
Oh, that would be too easy. DJ, does that answer your question? Default behavior. All right. So I think it's 5 minutes left to us, and I definitely have a couple of questions for you, which are written down before, which I'm interested into. So there are like two sides of the coin. Is there something that was easier than expected, and is there something that was like harder to implement than expected?
Yeah. So I mean, maybe easier was really less. Once we had the setup with the modules, I mean, as you say, I know, especially when you use the HTML5 app repo for the first time, it's really hard to you try to get your app in, or also if you do changes in the DB, like these deployment modules, how I would call them, they fail often when you deploy the first time. So also like getting the calc view in, because this is something you cannot really test locally, so you have to do a CDS deploy or npm run deploy every time to try, or does it import now? So really getting that up and running is kind of annoying, especially if you do it the first time. Yeah. But I have to say, as soon as we had it running, so as soon as we had this overall structure, also with the web apps and how they are bundled and pushed to the app router, they really work like a charm. So we could just execute npm deploy at any point of time, and it would work. So it didn't break once we had it. And I was like kind of concerned that, at one point we added a third web application, like this approver application came in last. And then I was like a little bit concerned to say, I hope it works if I just add the source code in there, add this new npm script, and it just worked. So once everything is set up, I was really surprised how smooth it goes. I know that setting it up was not as easy as I wished it would be. It was also partially because in the beginning, everyone worked on their own project. So I did like this map application in a local environment, only with mock data in the UI. The form app worked the same, the cup app. And then we kind of I think I would say 1.5 or 2 weeks in the project, we merged all the code bases in one repository. And I would say this happened too late. This should have happened maybe not from day one, but day 2 or 3. It's because once you have everything in one code base, it makes it so much easier to distribute. But again, I mean, we didn't work full time on everything, not full time all the time. Maybe like in the peak of the project, everyone was working more or less full time on it. But this was more besides our day-to-day job. So I think the standards shouldn't be like compared to real product development standards for this.
Okay. And I think it's one of these rare moments where we as developer advocates go beyond just building not hello world applications. We usually go a little deeper, but this full end-to-end building a project is somehow not new, but refreshing sometimes.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more. This is like a totally different experience from all the stuff that I've done in the last, like since I joined the team, 1.5 years, I would say. So almost 2 years now. So it was refreshing, learned many new things. Also like stuff that I expected to be super hard worked easier. Also the other way around, where I was like, why is this not working? Also like, I mean, also just in the UI5 area where I did the development, I was like, I had it so much easier in my memory. But yeah, it grounds you a little bit.
Okay, so is there something you take away as like action items you want to like double down, or?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I already said this will be on GitHub, I promise. And also all the stuff that we talked about here, and also this like code highlights that we didn't have the chance to speak about, I will summarize them all in a block view. Also write 1 or 2 paragraphs about each, and then link the lines of code on GitHub that are responsible for that highlighted.
Nice, awesome. So thanks, Marius, for being with me.
Yeah, thanks for
Thanks
inviting
everybody.
me.
Thanks. Hopefully not the last time. I mean, there's so much to talk about. Thanks for everybody on the stream or on the replay, and I wish everybody a healthy, a good rest of the week. Bye, Marius. Bye, everybody.